This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net and Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. And you may think you can avoid the maze, but you can't, even if you're prepared. Even if we think that we have everything set 100%, it's not going to work. There's always going to be something that we have to fix. And that's okay because that's what life is about. It's not perfect. So if you think your friends who are posting on Facebook that yesterday was the most perfect day in their life, everything was wonderful. You know what? I think there was one little thing that maybe wasn't quite so wonderful. Now, how does that resonate with you? Today, I have a guest on who is going to tell us about her journey. And it may not be yours, but I think you're going to find something in her story that you're going to say, huh, maybe if I would have tried that, or maybe in the future, I will try that. Her name is Takiya LaShaune, and she is with me, and she looks very bright eyed this early Monday morning. So, welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is an honor to be here. I'm just looking forward to sharing my experience and hopefully reaching even just that one person to make a change. So thank you for
Exactly.
inviting me.
Sure. So give us a little bit of background. You can go as far back as you think our listeners would need to know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. So, where to start? I'll just be completely transparent. I believe in authenticity. I believe in transparency. And really, in this phase and season of life, I'm learning more about believing in vulnerability as well. And I guess my story of where I got to today really begins really truthfully in my childhood, but I'll try to compact it. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I am a overcomer more so of these things. I've not allowed the stigma of those titles to slow me down, but I've gone through an immense amount of what we would call trauma. I've been homeless before with my two very young children. I experienced a lot of, because of my childhood history, coming from a home where there was neglect and dysfunction, that set the stage for who I became. And I want to express that it's absolutely not who I've become. I'm a word person. And so I like to emphasize that because we are always evolving and this is a journey. And in our lives, during that journey, we evolve. What I like to tell and say to people is that the lessons that we go through in life, they're not mistakes unless we keep repeating them. They're lessons. And at my 47 years of age, I've learned a lot of life lessons. Like I said, my childhood, I was a victim of molestation in the home. That set a stage where while I had a father figure in the home, I did not have that relationship with a father. And so that opened many doors of me becoming a young teen that led into a lifestyle where I was looking for that love and that validation. And we know as young girls, if we don't have that, the first guy that comes along that shows us any kind of that attention or affection, it's displaced.
Right.
And so I fell into a lot of ways that caused me to go through some things, to make some choices, some tough challenges. And I feel as if my story today, marrying, meeting who is now my ex husband, but became my husband, a lot of those things that I thought I'd worked through in my adult life, I found those showing up in my marriage on my behalf, but also um, recognizing that my patterns, that even in getting married, I had not learned that it was not my job to help someone else in their healing
Yeah,
journey, if that makes sense. And so
definitely does.
I I was still drawing or attracting individuals that came from backgrounds that were very similar to mine, and we were trauma bonding, if that makes any sense. So what I try to do is I definitely do not take the fault and the blame for what the individuals have done to me, but I've learned to recognize, Takiya, what are you doing that's allowing access of the same type of individuals in your life? And so that marriage exemplified some of the same attributes that I saw in my childhood: abuse, manipulation, and it led to the divorce, which ultimately led to my ex-husband, who is now my ex-husband, becoming the stalker, and I became a victim of intimate partner stalking.
Wow. You've been through a lot in a
Yeah.
short, really in a short period of time, as we say. And so I have a question to ask you, because one of the things that we hear a lot of is individuals who are brought up in a neglectful home. I'm not going to even talk about the abuse, but even just the neglectful home. Um, so many of them feel that this is what I deserve because that's what they've been taught. But you seem to have figured it out at some point, especially once you got into the marriage, that wait a second, I was treated this way as a youngster. I'm being treated this way again. Like, why? So, where did you get that energy that said, okay, I'm not going to let this continue to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's a great point because, again, that's my personal experience. And I'm sure many out there enduring that and wondering the same thing. And for me, I think my aha epiphany moment was, again, just looking over the history and just going, I, this this could not be how life is supposed to be. Why it's the common what's that comment that people make, when you self-reflect and you go, okay, it's been 1 2 3, it could not possibly be every, maybe I have to start self-reflecting that
Right.
it goes, if it's not everybody else, it could possibly be you, Takiya. And I don't say that to the negative. That was my question of, what am I adding to this, or what am I allowing? And that was the turning point right there. Is not necessarily was I doing anything to deserve this, it was that brokenness or that unhealed trauma in me that was allowing me to think that this is all I can get, this is all I deserve. I, of course, I still had standards and morals, and I thought I was progressing. But what I realized within myself was, there's something in you, Takiya, that says, well, I've gone through this in my childhood, so I can relate, so I can understand. So I should extend that grace, or I possibly am that person that can help him to heal because I've gone through this. And I just wish somebody would have understood me. So why wouldn't I be understanding to them? And you're not wrong in that thought process, but it was wrong for me to think that that was my place to do that. And I think that's where a lot of us struggle. And that's where I say I had to take self accountability. Again, not in any way justifying any of my ex-husband or any man that I ran into problems or abuse with, not justifying their actions at all, because they have to take accountability as well. But what I was doing was self-reflecting and going, let's look at the pattern here. If it's not you, it must be me. And like I said, the me was, I was simply allowing access, and my mindset was telling me that you owe something to someone else because you're working on your healing and you recognize what you need to do, so maybe you should help this person. And that's just simply wrong. That's not my job. And it's so interesting that you prompt that question, because I woke up this morning and my literal first thought was about this exact process, that, Takiya, you've got to work harder at knowing that it's okay to live for you. It's okay to put you first. It's okay. You are deserving, and you don't have to keep trying to fix other people's problems.
And exactly, my husband not too long ago said to me, you know, I know you love doing your podcasts, but you talk to people who have really struggled. He said, and you've struggled and you coach and you listen to people's struggles and you help guide them.
Mhm.
Doesn't this make you feel like lost at times? And I said, no, because what it does for me, it makes me say, okay, I've been there. I don't want to go back. So I'm going to listen to Kia and say, okay, I know it's not the same situation. I did not grow up in an abusive house, but I grew up abusing myself and not
Mm.
physically, but I thought
Yep.
people didn't like me. I didn't think I fit in. And I made such a big deal of it that I believed it. And the people around me started believing it.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
took me a long time to realize that where did this come from?
Mhm.
And I still today don't know exactly where it came from, but I know when I too made that pivotal point of saying, well, if I keep feeling this way, I'm never going to have any real friends. So I got to figure out a different way of feeling. I had to find the tools. I tried doctors, tried therapy, and it all kept going back to things that they convinced me it was.
Mhm.
And I realized, but it's not. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't the girl next door. It was accumulation of things. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be like everybody else. But when I looked in the mirror, that's not what I saw. So what I'm hearing you say is that you really thought in the beginning, well, because I've gone through it, if I'm with other people who have gone through it, I can help them because I don't want to go through it again.
Mhm.
But yet you made yourself a victim in some ways because they now know your vulnerable part.
You are so hot on. You are so spot on. I mean, even in this instance with the marriage, looking back, they always say hindsight is 2020. When you start looking back at where are the signs, where are the red flags? Well, hindsight is 2020. You see it. And I look at the fact that in the way and the manner that I met my ex-husband, he saw all of my vulnerabilities. He saw, we actually met at a business retreat. Well, our second encounter, we had met 7 months prior, crossing paths, which is so interesting in one state, but we ended up 7 months later in another state at a business conference together. And I'm thinking I'm amongst colleagues, I'm a keynote speaker there. So I'm sharing my story. I'm talking about the trials and the tribulations and the obstacles and what I've survived and what I've overcome. And I'm speaking to a room to inspire, encourage colleagues and up and coming entrepreneurs, but he's sitting in that room and he's just eyes stuck to me and he's studying me and he's hearing all of the vulnerabilities and he knew exactly how to approach me with that. And so you're spot on with that. You're spot on with that.
So
Yeah.
part of what we're sharing today with the listeners, which I think is really important, nobody else is going to heal us.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have to do it ourselves. And I think one of the reasons you do what you do today, and I love it, you call yourself a warrior for survival, is that you're getting out there, you're sharing your story, you're supporting others, but there's a fine line in the sand that says, I'm not going to go back.
Mm.
You cannot pull me over there. I am now strong enough because I know what happens if I go back. And yet you're talking to other people who are so vulnerable that in the beginning, they don't believe they can go forward. They say they want to, but they're going to give you every excuse in the book why they've got to go back to the bad marriage. They've got to go back to the bad job. They've got to deal with parents who maybe sadly didn't have a choice, but brought them up the way they did. And I know you're a
Mm.
parent, okay? So you know that you have choices in bringing up your kids, but it's a possibility at some time in their life, they may look back and go, why did she do that? but we do the
Mhm.
best we can. So
Yeah.
tell us about, you went through your divorce, but in the meantime, you were building yourself up. You were building a business. You went back to school. You did all these great things. So what was it like the day you finally said enough?
Mm. Yeah. I actually remember that day so vividly. And I've shared these before and after pictures of the day that I actually sat up in bed. It was in our home. We were still married. And I sat up in bed, and the impacts of how tumultuous the relationship, the marriage was starting to show, not only emotionally and mentally, but physically. Okay. I had started, I'm generally a healthy person, not on medication, all the reports peak pretty well. But during this season of my marriage, I actually battled laryngitis for a whole year. My voice would come and go, it was really raspy. And I'm in the midst of hosting. I had my own talk show, and I look back at it now and I'm like, God, you can hear it, you could see it. My skin was very ruddy and dark. I was seeing one doctor after another, and they just couldn't pinpoint like what is going on with her. And they were just prescribing one medication after the other. And I even took a picture of this, and I opened this box that I had, this little carry case for, and I had just maybe 10 to 15 bottles of pills. And this is someone that wasn't on medication. And it was this morning that I sat up and I picked up my cell phone to look at myself, to open the camera, to just look at myself. And I looked like death warmed over. I mean, when I show friends the picture now, they're like, that's not you. That's Photoshop. That's Takiya. That's not you. And I'm like, yes, it is. And I just looked like the life was leaving my body. And it was. And that was the morning that I said, I can't do this. I prayed for this marriage. I feel like I'm seeking the Lord. I'm doing what God's asking and wanting of me. But I remember just having this settled feeling in my soul, in my relationship, my conversation with God. He said, I did not create you to be battered, bruised, betrayed, belittled, or broken, Takiya. And for me, I knew that was my release. He was saying, it's time to go. And it wasn't an easy journey. I thought that ending that would be okay. Well, I wanted to be amicable, I wanted to be cordial, but this is just not it. And little did I know that it was just really the beginning of what was to come. And it has not been an easy journey. Even today, you said something earlier that no one is responsible for our healing. We are responsible for our own healing. And the difficulty in that is there's so many factors and variants of other people inserting themselves in your life and adding to that trauma and adding to that stress. And you are responsible in and of yourself to continue to fight. Healing is hard. And I think that is why a lot of people struggle with it, including myself. It is a journey. And just as your show says, avoid the maze, it's a journey. But you have to continue to make the decision to get up and put one foot in front of the other, no matter what that looks like. Today I woke up with all these thoughts and battling what should and what shouldn't, and I should have said this, or coulda, woulda, shoulda. But this is another day in the book that I got up and I put one foot in front of the other. And so, again, for me, it was that seeing that I was losing myself. And I later ended up moving out of state and ended up getting with a holistic practitioner, a world renowned stress doctor, who actually confirmed, yeah, you're dying and we got to do something quick. And it was just the amount of stress and trauma that I was enduring in that marriage, compiled with what I was enduring from my life that I had not faced. And so, really, the sky cracked wide open that day when I made the decision to leave. And it was like, okay, let's let the healing begin.
You know, it's quite interesting. I went through a divorce, God, 40 plus years ago, because I'm married 40 years. So it was obviously before this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think we both knew when we met each other, started dating, got engaged, got married, that it wasn't for the right reasons. Um, I think we both had that in the back of our mind. Our parents expected certain things of us. The families didn't like each other, but our parents expected certain things, and it was like, okay,
Mm,
we love each other, we'll get married. Um, when the marriage broke up, I was still going through that phase of nobody likes me. It's hard to have friends. Now I'm getting divorced. I'm living in his city. They're all going to be his friends. Who's going to be my friend? No self-confidence. And truthfully,
mm,
when I look back, I have no idea how I made it. But I carried my anger for almost 30 years.
mm,
And as soon as I would say, oh, I'm over it, no, I wasn't, because there was still something that I felt like just never got resolved. But I did wake up one morning and I said, I can't carry this with me anymore. I've had migraines for over 30 years, almost
mm,
going back to the first time I met him. Okay. Nothing was quite right in my body, but I have this wonderful, loving husband now who tells me all these great things, and I can't hear it. And I keep telling him, don't say those things. And he keeps saying them. But when I woke up that one day and said, I need to listen to my husband, he tells me he loves me. He tells me I'm beautiful. He tells me that I don't do things wrong. I just do them differently. And that was his way of saying to me, it's not a mistake. Maybe you don't want to do it that way. So maybe you can do it differently the next time. And once I started hearing that, I started healing.
mm,
And I remember when I told my oldest son, I don't hate your dad anymore. In fact, I'm so glad we had those 7 years together. I'm sorry I carried it on for another 23 years because that was something I shouldn't have done. But again, like you said, we can't talk about the shouldas and wouldas. We got to do what we need to do, taking each step. And you're a survivor with young, well, they're not quite young children, but they're growing and they're all doing well. So what did what do you think they saw in your journey of healing that has helped them become accomplished?
oh, wow. That's a good question. And I'm going to be brutally honest when I answer that. And they're older now. I mean, they're young adults. They're now 21 and 26. And somebody once said, oh, when you have older kids, it's so much easier. Like, no, it's not. Now
No,
you're
it's not.
praying for your young adult kids who can make their own choices. But I will say this, to me, it's been like a double-edged sword. My children saw their mother be extremely resilient in the things that I overcame. They always knew me to be an entrepreneur, even when we endured homelessness. At the time they were young, they were 4 and 10 years old when we were homeless. And to them, they just saw, well, my mom got out of this situation and we ended up living in a tack room on a farm in a barn. And I cried every day about that. But my kids were out there in that field running around with chickens and sheep and dogs, and they're resilient. All they were like, we have a farm. This is great. All they cared about is us being together and happy. And I was in there like bawling my eyes out. But my children saw resilience, and they are extremely resilient. They can bounce back from anything. I've seen them both do it. I've seen them endure obstacles of their own, and I'm extremely proud of them. But I say it's a two-edged sword because I think I feel guilty sometimes because they endure struggles sometimes that they don't have to. And I don't know if that makes sense. I'll try to make it make sense. Um, because they thought, well, my mom's been homeless and she got us off the street. My mom was in a physically abusive relationship and she got herself together. My mom built businesses from the ground up. Every time she went through something, she overcame it by enduring something. And I think I taught them resiliency, but I also see in my children, sometimes I go, oh my gosh, what is their rock bottom? Like, when are they going to go, enough is enough? And I feel like I innately taught them that. I feel like in their mind, this is the positive. We can overcome anything. But somewhere, somehow, I also triggered that this is what life is, and you're going to constantly go through stuff. So it's like a double-edged sword, if that makes sense. I'm extremely proud of them, but everything I worked hard to build to ensure that they don't have to go through, I see them making some of those choices, and that's difficult. And they make the choices with the mindset, we're gonna, it's okay. We're gonna overcome it because we're Takiya LaShaune's kids. And I'm like, you're yourself, but I need you to benefit from my fight and my struggle. I don't want you to fight and struggle, you know? So they're amazing, but it just, there's that.
But don't you think we all need to go through struggles to find our strengths? And I belong to this group on Facebook. It's called the Ethel Circle, and it's through ARP. And the women are like 45 years and up. And I'm listening to their struggles, and it's like, okay, I can now see certain things that I would do if those were my struggles. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can do is offer, hey, if that was me, I think this is what I would try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized this past weekend, um, I was I don't like Sundays for some reason. I can't explain it. I grew up that way. It always seems like a downer day for me. And especially my husband he works a very intense job during the week. He drives an hour to work and an hour home from work. So the week is sort of behind us. But on the weekends, he's still tired. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I find myself being so protective of him because he's tired, but at the same time, have that little pity party inside of me, oh, why don't we go to a museum? Why don't we go here or there? But then I know, like, even if he went, he would not be happy because he's exhausted. Um, and so I have started taking steps. Okay, so if you're really that tired and you're going to take a nap or just sit on the couch, that's fine. I'm going to do X for me. And whether
Mm-hmm.
that's sitting in another room and watching a different program, going to our community pool, going grocery shopping, whatever it is, I now have
Mm-hmm.
figured out, hey, I don't have to have that pity party.
Right.
I'm going to do something for me.
Right.
Well, he does something for him. And what I found was when I finished doing that thing and he's had his time, I can then maybe suggest, hey, would you like to go out to eat? Or,
Right.
hey, let's barbecue tonight, or whatever it is. And I get his full response. I'm not making him happy. He's not necessarily making me happy, but we're doing what we need to do. And that's what I think your kids have seen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That, okay, I may have to be a little down so that I can figure out how to get back up.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah, 100%. I do. And
Yeah.
it's a thing as a parent though, you're just like, you don't want to see your kids go through
Right.
anything.
Exactly.
And that's and I do. I think that you're 100% spot on and I totally agree with that. And I believe that on the other side of their journey are their successes. They have to have their own successes. They have to have their own thought process. And it just sometimes it can be very difficult to watch it. And I will say that is how coming up and raising my children, God got me through, was those reminders of, well, first of all, those kids don't even belong to you. So stop trying to make them do what you want them to do. I have my own plan for their life. And that'll sit you down real quick. you know?
You are absolutely right. I know growing up, my parents, told my brothers and I what their plans were for us. Not one of
Mhm.
us followed in their plan.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times I would hear from my mother, if you only would have. And then
Right.
when she was ill and dying and had no idea that she was ill and dying, I was living with her temporarily to help out. And one day I said to her, I'm going in the other room. I have a podcast I have to do. She grabbed my hand and she said, are you a famous broadcaster? And I said, I'm the most famous broadcaster in this house. And the smile on her face. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I have to tell you, when I graduated high school, I said I wanted to go into communications and broadcasting. And my
Mhm.
parents said, absolutely not. You're going to get a teaching degree or nothing. So behind their back, I worked on my communications degree. When they realized that after I gained my associates, they stopped paying for school because back in the day, they did not see that as being a good plan.
Right.
But I knew that I had made the mark when I answered that question for her.
Mhm.
And it was like, and I've used that over and over again. When somebody will say to me, so Karen, how successful are you? I'm the most successful at this podcast. Wow. I don't, has nothing to do with numbers, has nothing to do with
Mhm.
dollars. It has to do with how I feel while I'm doing this.
Mhm.
But I know that you've created a business, a huge business. You've been successful in business. So, is there anything in particular that made you realize, I know this is what I can do and I can do it well?
Wow. It's interesting because as an entrepreneur and in all the avenues that I've worked in, I really would not have chosen what I'm doing now. It, so to speak, fell in my lap, as they say. But everything that God has given me to do has been birthed out based on life experiences. So, for instance, um, coming up as a kid, my dream was I love animals and I thought I wanted to be a vet in kindergarten. And then I got in middle school and they sent me for a summer to a vet to kind of do like this little internship. And I realized, yeah, no, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to scrub dogs' behinds and things like that. Count me out. I'm done. And then in middle school, it was an attorney. I wanted to be an attorney, and that stuck up through high school. And then I started with a class as a paralegal, and I was like, oh, this is too daunting. I don't have time for this. And so there's a little fly.
You've got a butler out there.
I know he wants to be on camera trying to take the limelight. He's all in it. But I really did not find my calling and what I was doing until that first relationship where this bad abusive relationship, and my kids and I literally fled. And when we fled, that's how we ended up homeless. I left everything behind. We ended up homeless, and I sort of went into this hiding space. And for me, that brokenness of, wow, how did I get here? And I know I made some choices, not accepting what he did, but taking self reflecting and accountability. Like, this wasn't a person you should have been dealing with to begin with. And doing that self reflecting and just going, okay, God, if you're real, which I believe that you are, I just need you to get me. I'm give everything to you. I lay everything before you and help me figure it out. And what came from that was a friend recommended, hey, why don't you go learn to do permanent makeup, cosmetic tattooing on eyebrows? And I've never done it. I'm not an artistic, I'm a creative person, but I'm not artistic. And it was that first step into the beauty industry that just led to other things that I wanted to put my hands in. And 14 years later, I went from being homeless to amongst the most successful in the world as far as what I do and what I do in the beauty industry, which is the lash and brow business. And so that put me in the beauty industry, but my purpose came from sharing my story. Everything spiraled snowballed from that. I shared my story with a woman that came into my business amongst one of the first clients those 14 years ago. And she came in and she would just, her husband would come with her. And I thought it was a little odd because it's a beauty business, not that husband and
Right.
boyfriends don't come, but he just was right beside her every time, even in the private room. And it was very uncomfortable. And we'd never talk. And after about the third trip, he didn't come. And she started to open up and she told me why he came. He's abusive and he wants to make sure I don't talk to people. And I'm thinking, why is she, I empathize with her, but I was thinking, why is she sharing this with me? And I remember feeling this nudge, this prompt from God to say, hey, look, you have the same story she has. Share your story with her. And I remember thinking, nope, my story was still a place of shame. I did not want to talk about it. I did not want to revisit it. I did not want to relive it. So the last thing I wanted to do was talk about it. By the end of the appointment, it just was on me so strongly that I just said, look, let me share something with you. And when I did, I just remember the tears and I thought I'd triggered her, but she sat up and she looked at me after that appointment. And what I heard in her voice was hope. She said, oh my gosh, but look at you. You got out of that relationship and you have this business and your kids are safe and you're building a brand. She was bewildered. And I realized in that moment it was hope. And it was hope because I opened up and shared my story. And this woman saw a woman who related to her. And in my vulnerability, she saw I can get out and I can live beyond this. And a year passed by and she called me and she had done just that. She got out of that relationship. She moved to another state and she started a beauty business. And
Wow.
so my journey really began then that I realized the power of vulnerability and transparency and authenticity, even in the midst of my own uncomfort, because it helps someone else.
Exactly.
So everything I've done has spiraled from that, written and published books, launching a TV talk show, launching the podcast. Every aspect of my success in business has come from my sharing. This is what I went through, and this is the avenue that God gave me to create and help me heal, but to help others get healing as well.
My mother used to say when I was growing up, don't hang out your dirty laundry for the neighbors to see. And of course, I never understood that because as a young kid, I'd say, well, it's not dirty. You just washed it. It's just hanging it out.
Right.
And as I got older and I understood it, um, it wasn't part of my personality. And I've always been somebody who has worn their heart on their sleeve and sometimes in the past overshared. And when I say
Mhm.
overshared, I wasn't prepared to be authentic in telling my story.
Right.
And when I started podcasting almost 13 years ago, I realized I have to be honest with myself, but I have to be honest with those who listen. And I may never meet one person who will ever listen to the podcast, and that's okay. But if you give somebody that hope that they can make whatever that changes in their life. And I'll tell you, when I finally made the change, not thinking that people didn't like me, I went back to my elementary school reunion. We've had three of them. I've been back to all three. The first one, I still wasn't ready. I still assumed that nobody really liked me. They were all being fake. The second
Mhm.
one, I sort of believed it. Just went to one last month.
Mhm.
I now believe these were my friends. I just didn't let them in back then. Whatever stopped me, it was me. But I'm never going to let it stop me again. And I've kept in touch with them in the last month, writing each other and just saying hello. It doesn't even have to be a long conversation. And it's individuals like yourself, Takiya, that I don't think will ever be healed 100%. because it's easy to slip back into those old thoughts. But we now have the tools to help us navigate. So tell my listeners how they can find you, how they can learn more, how they can reach out to you.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I just want to piggyback on what you said real quick about we not ever being 100% healed. I agree with that. I always tell people this is a healing ing journey and not a healed past tense. That's evolution. So with that said, one of my modalities of healing is I smile a lot. My best friend says that my smile is contagious, and I do. I generally love to be happy and smile. My social media handles is your smile is your weapon. Okay. And that is just, it's a testament to me continuing this journey, even though it's a healing process. So you can find the podcast. It's called Behind This Smile with Takiya LaShaune. You can find me on all social, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Your smile is your weapon.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining me today. And, keep smiling. And I hope my listeners will follow you because we all need that hope. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much, Ken. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.